this moment, we're going to talk about Von Miller. Let's bring in Jon Heath again from Jon Heath Sports Media. Jon, how are you tonight?
I'm doing a lot better than Von Miller, I can tell you that much.
And he opens up strong. I like it.
Let's start with that. When we talked to you last a couple weeks ago, we were talking about Von Miller a little bit. We were told at that point that he was facing a 4-game suspension, and there was a lot of loose balls out there. We weren't really sure exactly why or how this was going to go down. Now, all of a sudden, we're told that it's 6 games, and it should have been more. What have you heard about this?
It's a very complicated situation, but basically the NFL wanted to suspend him for the whole year, and the NFL Players Association said it should only be 4 games, and they kind of got a compromise and made it 6 games, and it could have been, they were negotiating from between 6 and 8 games, and somehow they got it down to 6 games, and he really got off lucky because it could have been a whole year. Do you want all the details of what went down?
Yeah, absolutely. I want you to give us everything of what you know. What I know in a basic sense is that he tried to dance around doing a test. There was something spilled. He drank a whole bunch of water to dilute a test. Why don't you give us a little bit more of the professional breakdown on that, though?
Yeah, that's a pretty good summary of what happened. When he came into the league his rookie year in 2011, he tested positive for marijuana. And because of that, he didn't get in trouble for it, but then he was placed in the league's substance abuse program where they would test him every now and then just to make sure that he's staying away from stuff that's not allowed. And apparently when they went to test him, like you said, he spilled it, and he told the guy that was taking his sample, he was like, all right, I got to go out to practice. I'll have to give it to you when I come back. And then when he came back, he gave him an extremely diluted sample, and the NFL considered that tampering with it, and to them, tampering with a test is the same thing as failing a test, and they considered that his second offense, which would have been there was a question as to whether it was second or third offense. If it was his third offense, he would have been suspended for the year. If it was his second offense, he should have been suspended for 4 games. And like I said, the players' union and the NFL negotiated it to 6 games. So he really got off lucky, and the Broncos got off lucky because it could be a very worse scenario than it is.
We're talking with Jon Heath from Jon Heath Sports Media about the Denver Broncos and his specialty here. Von Miller being suspended 6 games in the NFL for substance abuse violations that he's had before.
Hey, John, Nighthawk, I just had a question for you. I'm just going off the top of my head, but isn't he like the 3rd or 4th member of the Broncos defense in the last 3 or 4 years to get caught in this program?
Yeah, DJ Williams.
Without cheating and Googling, it just kind of hit me as you were talking that I was thinking of some other ones. DJ
Williams had a very similar situation last year where he tried to cheat a test, and he was suspended for 6 games as well. So it may be a little bit of a problem that they have with their trainer because, like you said, other players have had a problem with it. But with this happening, they'll probably start to crack down on it now and try to get a hold of the situation.
Out of curiosity, I do remember reading a little bit that in the process of anointing the Broncos to the Super Bowl this year, and I say that just because it seems like there's a little bit of a momentum that a lot of people are starting to just assume. The first 6 games, I know they open up with Baltimore. Obviously, that's a different Baltimore team, but do they have any real competitive matchups in those other 5 games going forward for Mr. Miller's suspension?
They don't. The next week they're on the road in New York against the Giants, and that'll be a tough game. But then they're home against the Raiders, home against the Eagles, on the road against the Cowboys, and home against the Jaguars. And that's really not a hard schedule at all. It would be easy for them to go 4-2 in that time without Miller, and they only have 1 division game against the Raiders in Week 3 during that time, and that's a home game, so they should be able to handle it. So it's not like this is going to prevent them from winning the AFC West. And if they win the AFC West, they're in the playoffs. And like the Ravens showed us last year, once you get into the playoffs, all you got to do is get into the playoffs, and then you can go from there.
Now, Von Miller was a rookie in 2011, so this is his 3rd year. Is he a restricted free agent after this season, or is that one more season ahead still?
2015 is when he becomes a free agent.
Okay. So Going forward, organizationally, obviously he is a elite level player. However, now the point that he's at, he's one bad urine test away from being out for an entire year. Do you think this will have any long-term effect on the Broncos' interest in keeping him around and giving him franchise player money?
I think they'll still try to keep him around, but I think it affects him more than it affects the team. I think this is going to be a huge negotiating chip for them, because they're going to be like, look, one more screw up from you and you're out for the year. And so he may want to head somewhere else if somebody else will give him more money. But I could see him stick around in Denver, just not as much as what he had the potential to make on the track he's on.
Let's say the Broncos defense is affected more than we're thinking it's going to be by losing their best defensive player for 6 games. Going past that 6th game, where does the defense stand after not having him there for that long? How are they going to shape up after that, and how are they going to overcome that? Who's going to take over for him? How good are they going to be when he comes back?
In base defense, it'll be Nate Irving at the same linebacker position. He's had a very, very good preseason, so I'm pretty sure he'll be just fine there. And in nickel, Miller has been defensive end in training camp, and they'll probably have Sean Phillips there a lot. He'll be across from Robert Ayers, and Derek Wolfe, when he's healthy, will probably be in there too. But Sean Phillips is obviously a very good pass rusher. He had 9.5 sacks last year. And like I said, Irving's looking very good. So I don't think they'll miss a beat that much on defense at linebacker. They'll miss him as a pass rusher the most, but at linebacker, I don't think they'll be too bad off.
Well, and I know hindsight is 20/20, and we talked about this last time you were here, John. But I kind of look at this whole development now, and I'm sure you, as a Broncos observer and admitted fan, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sure, it would be nice to have Elvis in this situation, right?
That's hard to say, you know.
I mean, you mentioned the pass rush. That's just why I thought of it, and I'm not trying to rub it in. And after we talked about it last time, about a month ago, I kind of looked into it a little more, and it seems like the Broncos are slowly starting to admit that was not entirely how they wanted that situation to go. Correct?
Oh, yeah. If they could do it over now, especially with the Miller situation, I'm sure they would have handled it differently.
Anybody else on the defense that's going to stand out to you, to not just at the position that Von Miller was playing, but that's going to be able to step up that we're not maybe seeing right now?
They slid Wesley Woodyard inside the middle linebacker, and he's a guy that had 117 tackles last year, a handful of sacks, a handful of interceptions. I think while Miller's out, he's really going to step up and be the leader, especially now that he's at the middle linebacker position. I think he's a guy that you'll hear about week in and week out, and he'll probably finally get some national recognition this year. I think he should have been a Pro Bowl player last year.
John, unfortunately, much as I've been trying to catch as much of the preseason, I do have a occupation which makes me work a lot of second and third shift. How has Monty Ball looked so far in the first couple of preseason games?
He looks very tough as a short yardage back. I really like when he lowers his shoulder and run guys over. I think in goal line situations and short yardage situations, he needs to be their guy. Against the Seahawks, they had Ronnie Hillman in for a goal line carry, and he fumbled it, and the Seahawks ran it back like 107 yards or whatever for a touchdown, running it out of their own end zone. And Hillman's not that guy. He's your scat back, Darren Sproles type player. Ball is a guy that I think should be their short yardage guy, and I think eventually he will be, and eventually I think he'll become the starter. And I like what I see from him. He looks good as a receiver as well. The only thing he needs to work on right now is pass protection.
Talking with Jon Heath from Jon Heath Sports Media. John, thanks for bringing in your insight again with the Broncos here. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more shaping up as we start to get closer to the season. As we go through the season, we'll look forward to hearing from you again.
All right, thanks, guys.
Well, real quickly, John, just a refresher for those out there in TV listener land. Radio listener land. Your work can be found where, sir?
I actually just started working on milehighreport.com, so you can find me on Mile High Report. And my own personal blog is jonheath.net, JONHEATH.net. And I just joined one of my buddies started up a site, skinnyguysports.com.
Skinny guy sports.
It sounds like the opposite of this show.
Exactly. That's perfect. All right, John. Thanks a lot.
John.
We'll talk to you again later, man.
All right. Talk to you later.